PI to YouTube goes directly. And it would be, in this case, in intelligence-wise, we could say that it was available. You know what's interesting here? Sometimes it's working, sometimes it isn't. Okay. And now the meeting is being live streamed. We'll see how it works. Okay. What other questions? So everybody has their cameras on. And what I want to do today is do a review of the exam. I have decided to do an extra session this Friday at 3:30 to 4:30. So I'll do an extra hour this Friday. We'll be on Zoom. I added an extra session. If you go into Zoom meetings, you can join me on Friday, and I will go additionally into review, answer any questions that you have about automated trading systems, anything you have, Q&A. I'm yours for an extra Friday. Okay. The other thing that we want to be sure, anything else that I need to cover before I start? Any questions? Let me know now. Ashton and Patrick, let's get everybody's cameras on. It's great. Fred, we always see kind of like half a, I don't know how you sit, right? It may be good. It's good for posture, Patrick. Where then later on, you don't have to go to physical therapy. You say, oh God, I'm hunched over because I never had that class where I was halfway laying down. So it's good for Fred. It's good also for physical therapy. See, it'll be a physical therapy session too. How do you get good posture, not slumping? Okay, I even realize it in terms of driving, you know, there's a headrest there. You know, you're supposed to be using that as well. Okay, and Taylor and Andrew. Okay, anything else? Madeline, we're ready? You look ready. Did you look? So let's talk about some things here. Okay, let me share my screen. And in sharing my screen, let me go to our side. So if you look at our Zoom meetings, you'll see on Friday, there'll be an extra Zoom meeting there. And under what's due, we have the, am I in the right one? We have the back test. And the thing that we have on Monday, of course, we have the test in person. We'll all be together. We're all going to get excited. We'll all be able to see each other. It will be in person. I always tell you to be generous and help each other. In this exam, you will not be able to help each other. It will be closed book, closed internet. We will be using Respondus. You need to bring your cane card, pictured cane card. If you don't have your cane card, then a picture ID. You need to bring your backup. You need to bring your laptop with Respondus software on there. If you have allotted time, come up to me and let me know that you have allotted time. And I will give you a extended time. So just come up to me and tell me that you need that, and I'll place you where it will be quiet, that you'll have allotted time to do it. Any general questions about that? And Dylan, can you be so kind and check the chat? If somebody doesn't unmute themselves, if they have a question, then that's for me, please let me know. Anything else? Okay, so let's do a review. And if I looked at the Word document that I gave for review, I'm going to review backwards. So I'm going to do that, Isabella. I'm going to go on the open-ended. Do you want me to go through the multiple choice first or the open-ended questions for the review, Isabella? What do you think?
Are we going to go over both of them?
Yes. I hope to go through both of them. But what should I go first? I think what?
I'd say multiple choice first.
Okay, you want to do multiple choice. Why?
I don't know. It just seems like we would do multiple choice first. So in my brain, go over that first.
Okay. All right. And what do you think, Pavla? Pavel?
Yeah, I agree with her. Multiple
Okay.
choice.
Okay, so I'm going to go over multiple choice and then I'm going to go for open-ended. Okay, so let's start. So if I were going to do that on the multiple choice, basically, is I would, and you can do that now, is go to the PTT and documents, Isabella, and I would go to the 9th edition, and I would download those chapters for the multiple choice. So for instance, I would download and the data management, right? So if I went to my downloads, I would then see my multiple, I would see my PowerPoint. So let's start with, let me even just start with my PowerPoints. Are you seeing this, Isabella?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'd start off, we talked about hardware, right? So basically, we talked about the components of hardware. And let me just, and basically, I would make sure that I would understand the CPU, primary storage, the difference between secondary storage, output, and technologies. We've talked about it before, right? And those issues here, the issues basically, in general, the prices of hardware goes down. The only exception is probably iPhones, right? iPhones usually are the exception. Their price doesn't go down, but you almost can think possibly they go down because they've added so many new features, right? I get a better camera, I'm going to get more memory, I'm going to get a bigger CPU. So in general, you can think there's a rapid reduction of the hardware, and they're getting smaller, and there's getting mobile, and there's something called BYOD, is bring your own device. So a lot of times in work situations, sometimes you have a more advanced machine than when we go to the lab. You'll see that those lab computers are more antiquated than what you have. So you'll be able to see those. So basically, they're input devices, right? So you need to know what are input devices. The idea of input devices, that's where I get data in, right? And how am I going to get it through the keyboard, through voice? Now voice recognition is big, even voice to text or text to voice, right? Ways in which I have all ways to do the mouse, the keyboard, right? How do I get any of my input down? My output then or how am I going to get the results? So how do I see the results? I see the results via monitors, via printers, via plotters. A lot of times even from AI, the output could be voice, it could be text that I see on a monitor. So those are outputs. So I have the input, I have the processing in the middle, I have the output, and then I have things like VR, virtual reality, where I have the combination many of you can see that we'll be looking at it in the second part of our semester, where you'll see virtual reality applications via media. Now real estate can be virtual reality before even the building is built. You'll be able to see it. And then this is the key here of what we call the brains of the computer, the central processing unit. When we want to do more computations, this needs to be more powerful. So it breaks it down into that CPU. The way that CPU breaks down is inputs into the CPU come from something called RAM. We definitely are, Isabella, we're going to see that random access memory, and that random access memory then is volatile or non-volatile. What do you think, Pavel? But the idea, the word volatile, have you heard that term, right? If I think about RAM, random access memory. So the idea, we have something called volatility. So if I'm going to have it volatile, right? What does it mean? You have an idea, Pavel?
It's like spontaneous. You won't know. Like
It comes in and out. So when I have the RAM, what you have in your computer, when you're running then, let's say Excel, it takes it from your secondary storage and brings it in your primary storage. It's going to bring it into RAM to be used. RAM is very quick, but when you shut down your computer, do you still have that Excel spreadsheet in RAM? No, it gets erased in RAM, Pavel. But what do you want to do beforehand is you want to save it to secondary memory. So on the CPU here, when I'm having the CPU here, if I look at it, the inputs are coming from the random access memory into the CPU. My data travel in the chip, and I have something called an ALU. The ALU stands for arithmetic logic unit. What does it mean? It means that, you remember in Ninja Trader, Dylan, you remember in Ninja Trader when we created the optimization and we wanted to sort by net profits? Do you remember that, Dylan?
Yep.
What part, if I asked you, Dylan, what part of the CPU does the sorting, you would say what? The arithmetic logic unit, because it's the logic. What does the computer do? The computer in this case is dumb, but does quite quickly, right? And it takes one number next to another number and says what? Which one is greater than the other? That's logic. Greater than or less than, that you can think about it. And that's how a sort occurs. Now you can give commands, right, in Excel to sort, but what's really happening in the background is that arithmetic logic unit is creating then that logic to go, one is higher than the other. And basically it knows, right, that 6 is greater than 5, and it can sort descending, ascending order. So if I look at that, the data then in the original form and instruction are sent to what they call storage registers. It's a place that's a holding place to hold the storage. So if I look at it, let me make this larger. So if you look at this, this is key here. I got my inputs here, right, from my keyboard, or that idea of NinjaTrader taking that data. And then you have, in this case here, you have the microprocessor. And what are we always looking for, Ryan, in a microprocessor when we buy our next version of my iPhone or the next version of my Mac laptop, is to have this be more powerful, right? And then I have what they call arithmetic logic unit there that is basically doing what? Arithmetic, Ryan. It's doing plus, minus, right? Doing all my calculations is being done there. And then this case, I have two storages that I need to differentiate. My secondary storage is somewhere like my application being stored. Like NinjaTrader was stored somewhere. Excel, we all know Excel, right, Ryan? You know Excel here. Excel is stored, let's say, on your hard drive. When you want to click on Excel, basically a copy of Excel comes into your main primary storage, and that main memory is called RAM, random access memory. This is where it's quicker. This disappears when we save our file and I close my machine. This is called volatile, meaning, but this works very quickly. What do I always want is I usually want as much as I can afford if I'm going to be doing any type of calculations, and especially when we're going to do anything like automated trading system or something like that, I want my RAM to be the largest possible. But it's expensive. It's more expensive than secondary storage. So my secondary storage is what we call non-volatile. The secondary storage is what almost like I can think about as permanent. It will remain. I shut off my computer. I get off my internet shuts down. Everything shuts down. In my hard drive or somewhere else, my secondary storage, it usually will remain. So this is called volatile. The output is the results, right? Just like we did in NinjaTrader. What were the inputs? All the data coming from a data feed, going and being processed, doing the calculation, having my RAM there, and the machine even either in the computer, or Aiden basically had it on his own machine, or we could have that virtual, it was there. And my output then, it remains. Questions on that? How's it going, Ryan? That makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so here is basically how the CPU works. Here is inputs from the software and basically taking it from my RAM, right? And it goes in and it starts taking those instructions and it executes it and gets results. And what I have is something called Moore's Law that used to say that every 18 months, we would be doubling inside our computing. This was by Moore's Law. You can look it up under Moore's Law, that now people are even saying that now we're going to even go faster than that. Now, once we start doing our chip design, it can go faster than that. So then we talk about primary and secondary storage, right? You know the difference. Primary, we can call it RAM. Also, we have something called ROM. So primary storage has what we call RAM. Random access memory. That's where my working software, think about working software. When I'm actually doing a PowerPoint, when I'm doing a Word, when I'm doing Excel, when I'm doing NinjaTrader, this random access, this is where it's working. There's a section of primary storage called ROM, which is read-only memory, that was put in by the manufacturer. It's kind of like the code for the operating system to kind of start up and running. My random access memory can be controlled by the end user. I decide what's in RAM, right? I'm right now in PowerPoint and Notepad. I decide what I'm using in RAM right now as the end user. When I save it, it gets saved to my secondary storage. So my primary storage is composed of mainly RAM, which I control. My ROM, my ROM, is already built in. I don't have control of what's in my random only memory. My secondary storage, I can have secondary storage I can have it built into my computer. I can have an external, I can have chips. I can have my secondary storage be in the cloud. It's where I save my work, where I have a copy of the software. That's secondary storage. Questions? Questions online? I'm okay, I can go on. So then there's the computer hierarchy. The computer basically just does zeros and ones, and it calculates it and it converts it. So the memory of the capacity of the hierarchy starts off with a bit, which is just a 0 or 1. You can think about it that. And a byte makes up then what? 8 bits, and you can think of it as a character. Like if I look at Ryan has, in your name, it has 4 bytes to it. That's all. It's just the way it's segmented. And then I can have a kilobit, megabit, gigabit. I can have terabytes, petabytes, and what's now in the internet and what's now in that AI is we can't even comprehend all the data that we want. And we want the artificial intelligence to find patterns in all of this data that will be accumulated. And you can think about how much data it is. Not only is it voice, but it's what? It's video. All of this that I'm recording, can you imagine how many megabytes and terabytes this can accomplish? And also with video. So in this case, that primary memory then, as I said, the AK main memory or RAM, and the 4 types of that main memory is broken up to basically RAM, ROM, the cache. Sometimes have you, Ryan, when you're typing, when you're going to Google something, it basically will come up with the word, what you're trying to Google before you finish. That's basically a lot of it, trying to make it faster is in cache memory. So some things in cache in that primary storage is listed there because we want it to be so quick. And then we can think about secondary storage. It can be my solid drives, thumb drives, everything that I can have can be solid. And we know then that my primary storage then compared, it can then, I have the size and the cost, and every time, and this can basically decrease. And that's it. So that's what I would be doing for chapter 1A. Okay, Isabella? Yes, no? Go faster, slower? Give me feedback.
I wouldn't say faster. I'd say
okay, you wouldn't say faster. Okay. All right. So, pardon?
You have already answered this in the past. How related are the questions going to be on the exam compared to the multiple choice online quizzes on Blackboard?
Similar.
Yeah.
Same type of think about it, maybe in a different wording, right? But if you know those, right, just not that the answer is A and the answer is B and the answer is C, but if I know it, just like the thing, the reason is it's just very similar. That's one of the things I would go over. The first things I do is I go over those quizzes. And then even when I showed you in those, you can even go through more quizzes through Wiley, through the flashcards. You know what I mean? I'd start off going through that, looking at the list of topics that I sent you in the Word document, finding out what the meanings are. If something I don't understand, maybe I didn't see a question like that in the quizzes, find out. It's easy to find out what it is, right? There's so many ways that I can find out. But yes, you know what I mean? It won't be probably 100%, but you won't be saying to yourself, wow, I never thought about that topic. You know what I mean? I never saw that before, right? So that's what I would do. Okay. So what's the next one? So let me go the same thing to 2. Let's see. I do the same thing. So 2 is talking about software. There's 2 versions. And if I go to my Word document, right? So so in this case, Andrew, right, is the CPU characteristic, primary storage, ALU, control RAM versus ROM, registries, right? We've gone through it. So now it's software, right? And the same thing that I would just go through my software and think I got the hardware, the physical, and you all know what software is. There's not one person here, Isabella, that doesn't understand what software is, right? Anything that I'm using right now, software. What software am I using is PowerPoint, right? Is software. But I have 2 issues on the software that I need to know about. And that is, if I look about, this is a good one that I have in the middle, hardware software, and then I have system software. System software is what? Operating system software. What operating system software have we been using, Isabella, right? You have on your Mac, you have Mac OS, I have Windows, for instance, and guess what? That software, basically when we think about it, and then I have application software, is that software becomes important to the operating system, has to match the application software. The operating system has to match with the software. So for instance, when you have your iOS phone and somebody else has, let's say, an Android phone, they need to get 2 different versions of the same software. Have you ever heard about that, Isabel? Just like NinjaTrader works on Windows, you need to get an operating system that can work on Windows, whether we're going to use a virtual desktop or whatever we're going to use it. Now, what we have is something called open source software. Open source software means that someone can see the code rather than just the company. Open source allows me to see what it's open, the source code. So if I went to NinjaTrader, I could see the source code that was available, and we'll look at that. So the source code is what I'm able to do. So I know what I know in terms here of system software is an operating system. So what operating systems software do you know? For instance, there's Windows, there's Mac OS, right? There's iOS, there's Android, there's something called Linux. Those are all operating systems. Who cares? You care because One is it's going to be attached to hardware, and certain software has to be able to be matched. Application software, you know what are application software, right? Whether we're talking about Office suites, Google Docs, doesn't matter where we're talking about, speech recognition, voice recognition, those are application software. And basically they're becoming more and more sophisticated with them. So that's application software. And the same thing, Andrew, if I wanted to look at it, I can see here, operating system, software licensing, piracy, people stealing, right? Open source. I got that. Then I go back to the next one, and let me just save here. Okay. Then next one would be, in this case, it'd be my data. Data. It is one of the things that I know. The first thing I need to know to NinjaTrader is what? I need to connect to the data feed in order to get data to be able to do any processing. So that's always going to be the key here. So in terms of the data knowledge, we need to manage our data. We have to, basically, we're going to collect our data to be able to query our data. And we're going to need to know those. So we talk about data governance. What is data governance? Is the processes, the rules, the procedures on how my data is stored, how my data is selected, how my data is retained. Being able to, for instance, we're a health organization, we need to be able to abide by certain rules. If I'm in banking, I have to provide with it, so I have to keep it secure. And data governance is basically an organization decides who's going to be responsible for the data, who's going to say what data is going to be collected, and it has to be secured. Just like at the university, your data, you would want it to be secured, but you also want to be in a situation that when you want to get results, you can find the data. So you have difficulties in data, right, that you need to know. Of course, it's security, there's government regulations. We have to, it may not be correct. We want to have reliable data. Think about it, in this case, Andrew David, that if we were going to use NinjaTrader and that data wasn't correct, we're forecasting based on faulty data. Wouldn't it be, it's important that it be up to date and it's timely. I don't want to look at old corrupt data. What's good for that? So we basically need to think about where can we get our data? We can get it from internal sources, external sources. I talked about data governance. We got to manage our data. And then there's something called the data hierarchy. The data hierarchy is similar than we talked about our bits and our bytes. There's a way in which to organize my data, and I have to be able to retrieve my data. That's why I have a database approach. Now, if I don't have it secured and organized well, my data becomes, the whole purpose for database management system is to minimize three problems that occur in data. That is data redundancy. What does it mean, Andrew David? That your data and you have your address, you move addresses, or even your address can be multiplied, let's say, to 30 different places along the university, your address. If we have it, we say, why do we need 30 times to store your data of your address? What we want to do is just reduce it. If I reduce it, it may tend to have less mistakes. And when you move from one place to another, Andrew David, what's going to be the idea is that I only have to change it one time. Data isolation is also a problem that you may have. I want to find out who in the sports team that's also a finance major that has a GPA, if certain, and I want to give them a scholarship. I don't want the data to be isolated. So that's another one. And another problem it's going to solve is data inconsistency. One time it says that you live here, and another time it says you live somewhere else. So it's going to improve that. The other things that I want to do is, what is data management system going to maximize is data security. I'm going to secure it in one location, so I only have to put all my resources in one location. I want data integrity. If I'm going to be trading, I want to rely on the integrity, and in data independence, I know that it hasn't been spoiled. So 3 things I want to minimize, 3 things I want to maximize, and then data hierarchy, I need to know that the data can be, just like we said, you remember the bit and the byte? You remember that, Ryan? The bit is just zeros and ones. The byte is what? A character. You remember, like your name, Ryan, we said, right? And the field, you can think about a field is like a column in a database. So you remember when we had net profit for NinjaTrader? Net profit is a field. And then entire, when we did that, basically we did that one table that we did, that we exported to Excel for giving our symbol, our net profit for one company. One symbol could be a data file or a table, one sheet. And the entire book, so this is like a field, then a data file, you can think about it, is a sheet. I'm giving you kind of ways in which you can understand it. And a database could be like the whole book. Or the whole file. And the hierarchy of data, you can think a university that has a file, a record. You'll see here the word record. Record, put in your notes, it's like a row. So you remember, like we did think about it as a student database. Each student is a record in the grade book. Or in the symbols, in the symbols, what is it? It's going to be the symbols we had when we did the Dow 30. Each symbol is a record. And I had 30 symbols. And the relational database model, I don't have to worry about it, but what I do want to work is what's a primary key and a secondary key. Primary key is going to be what? Pavel, the primary key is going to be what? It's always going to be unique. So if I have a student database and I have C number, last name, first name, and grade and major, what would be, and I asked what would be the primary key, what would be the primary key, Pavel? C number, last name, first name, grade, and major.
Would the C number be the primary key?
Why? Of course. Why? Because it's what?
It's unique just to you.
Unique, so I can find just one record.
Yeah.
Yes, Pavel?
Yeah. Primary. Yeah, that's a primary key.
And a secondary could be like last name or something, you know? But even though there are not a lot of, how do you pronounce your last name, Pierre?
Peeve.
Peeves. They're not a lot, but still not unique. I'm not going to guarantee, right? And even Pavel Peeve, I'm not going to guarantee that. You remember how every time they'll ask you certain things, and then you can see it that you can see this exact same thing that the student example is. Columns are called what? Fields. Rows are called records. And this entire one is a table. So that's all. And in big data, basically the characteristics of big data, what are the issues? Is trying that it becomes so elaborate that we need tools to do it. And what was an example where we use big data in this class, Dylan? Was in NinjaTrader, right?
Yeah,
and automated
NinjaTrader.
trading systems that really we had huge amounts of data. And what do we want in big data? And that's why we use a lot of times that artificial intelligence and machine learning, is that's where it really does well, is it finds the patterns. And you saw when we wanted to go 500 symbols, did I want to do 500 symbols? Did you? No. Let the computer do that. That it can do well of what? Using that ALU to sort. And if we have large memory, we can do that. So what is the characteristic of big data? That it has a lot of volume. Did we have a lot of volume, Dylan, and when we're doing automated trading? Sure. The velocity, did it come quickly? Could we do a variety? Yes, we could do a variety. We could do a number of symbols. We could do futures. We could do options. We could do currencies. So these are the characteristics. And the issues, of course, data dirty means that it's not clean, meaning that I can't rely on it. And managing that data, putting the data to use, I can use in different functional areas. And then what I want, when I was using, in this case, the difference here, a data warehouse, this is what you have to put in your notes, a data warehouse and a data mart, the key here is that it is historical. The key to my data warehouse and my data mart is that we're doing historical data, not real-time data. You remember even when we sorted, you remember when we were using NinjaTrader, Andrew David, we said go to historical and real-time, you remember? Because that historical, we can think about it, back testing really we can use as a data warehouse. We want to see back in time what was historical data. And the difference between think about it as a data warehouse, another database. And we do hypotheses. You can think about it as we can kind of do back testing for data warehousing. And data marts is a subset of a data warehouse. What does that mean? I may want to do things just on, let's say, healthcare stocks. That may be my data mart. And my data warehouse, I maybe want to look at all S&P 500. So I can think about it, it's a repository that it's organized by subject, and my data mart is going to be a subset of it. So think about this is like the big Costco, and this is like my little 7-Eleven. And this is the characteristics. Those of you that have known Excel and pivot tables, these are characteristics in which how you can organize it. And it's going to be much more sophisticated. This is going to be the role in which artificial intelligence is going to be doing it. And notice you see the word non-volatile. What does non-volatile mean? Pavel, what's non-volatile mean?
Like it's not sporadic.
It doesn't change. It stays the same. It's going to be there. And why? It's historical. It's not going to be like inventory. Let's say we worked in Publix, Pavel, and we look in the shelf, right? And we have milk. That inventory of milk is changing all the time. But if I take what were my transactions last month, they stay non-volatile. And we put that into the warehouse. That I put into my warehouse, and this is where I store my data. And notice here again, data quality, data governance. So if I go back to my Word, right, and I look at my my data, you can see here my data hierarchy, right? My keys, my data warehouse versus data marts, right? All of that. Okay, so I finished with that. What's my next one? Is my security. So security, what do we say about security? I have to be what? Do I always have risk when I'm dealing with it? Let me close this. Do I always have risk? Yes. Of course, in data security, I always have risk too. Right? And what's going to be the key then in my risk? Is I need controls. I need security, this is 5. I want 4, right? So what's going to be important? I have risk. And what do I want to do with risk? Maximize my risk or minimize my risk? Dylan?
Minimize.
Minimize my risk. Can I be completely zero? No, because then I won't live, right? I basically we'll all be under our beds, right? There's always risk anytime. So basically what we want to do in my data is think I'm always going to be vulnerable. But what do I want to do? I want to take proper procedures, just like you do all the time, Isabella, right? If you have a car, you lock your car, right? You have a house, you lock your house. Does it mean that your car won't be stolen? Does it mean that no one's going to break into your house? No. Is it 100% risk-free? And then we have to do cost-benefit analysis. I can get insurance, right? But if I have $100,000 condo, I don't want to get insurance for 10 million. But if I have a 10 million house, I don't want to get $100,000 for 100,000. So I think about these are things that you need to know. You need to know what a threat is. You need to know what exposure is. You need to know what vulnerability is. So basically, you can think about it is because we're basically more exposed, we're more exposed to hacking. Think about it. You hear about it all the time. It makes so much sense here. And we have something called unintentional threats. Unintentional threats is you as a user didn't mean to be a hacker. You just made the system more vulnerable. For instance, if I basically pasted my password on my computer screen and I was in an office, I did a human error that somebody can pass by and see it. Social engineering is that if somebody calls me and says they're IT and they said, do you mind, Dr. Rushanek, do you mind if you give me your password because we're doing updates? And I am such a nice person. You know how lovely I am, right? I'm just the sweetest of all, right, Isabella? That I say, yes, I want to cooperate. I say, yes, I did an unintentional threat. Somebody was trying to con me and I took for it, right? So that's it. So you need to know what's an unintentional threat by user, where the security threats are coming from. And always when you see the cloud, it's going to be in the cloud. It's always going to be the internet, going to even make me more vulnerable, right? And then I can think about my humans, and the more privilege I give them, the more threat they are. When we're in the audit area, I gave you more privileges than you have in your regular section. So you can upload to the audit area, Isabella, but guess what? You can delete unintentionally or intentionally other people's work. That's why you want to save all the work you put into the audit area and not allow that to happen. Okay, and this is what this whole chapter is about, is you get human error, unintentional or intentional, right? I was careless with my laptop. Social engineering, somebody with social skills try to, and this I guarantee you'll be on the exam. What are social engineering? Somebody trying to trick us. You know, all those con artists. You know, have you ever seen that movie? There's it's a TV show, Greed or something, you know, where people are themselves greedy. Oh, this deal sounds so good, right? And then there's deliberate, there's unintentional, there's deliberate. There's espionage, there's theft, there's software attacks that deliberately some people are trying to do, and they use it remotely via software attacks. So then you basically look up what is the difference between a virus, a worm, what is a phishing attack, that they're basically trying to pretend they're someone else. Spear phishing is exactly trying to go directly to it. I can have a remote needing no user action. This sometimes I need to click. You remember how they tell you don't click on suspicious links? Here I don't have to do anything, and there's going to be a denial of service or distributed denial of service, bring servers down, right? There can be Programmers can put in malicious software, kind of that you're not even aware of, by a Trojan horse, a backdoor, a logic bomb. There can be, I go to just being on the internet. I don't even know it. I download a program, and also I download malicious software, kind of adware. You know how you have those ads pop up that you don't even want. A keylogger. What's a keylogger? I go into the lab, start typing in my username and password, and then they have a software programming collecting it. Right, and then they have, what do I want to do? I want to reduce the risk. Nothing's 100%, and some of the risk, I say, hey, I'll accept it. I want to live, I'll accept that risk. Some of that risk is I want to limit it, just like I don't want to, Ryan, I don't want to go more than, lose more than 1%. I'll put in some controls. Risk transference means what? Dylan, what is risk transference? If I see that, I know it means what?
Does that have to do with like moving the risk to somewhere else?
Yes, and what for cars? Where do I move the risk to?
I'm not
The
sure.
car I buy. What do I buy to?
Oh, insurance. Yeah.
Insurance, right? And do I have security insurance? Yes. These big companies, our university, I bet has a lot of insurance for when they hack us, for all the damages that occur. Just like they have hurricane insurance, they have cybersecurity insurance. That's called transference. And a company has to decide on this. People, that's what data governance is about. How much risk are we going to accept, and how are we going to deal with it? Otherwise, we'll shut down the university, right? Then we'll be real secure, but we don't have any revenues, right? So it's the same thing. And then if you want, you can audit those systems. So what do you want to do? You want to set up controls. How do you want to set up the controls? We can do physical controls like the lab. Could you get into the lab? No, Dylan, what did you have to do? You had to put a card. It was so difficult you couldn't get in. But they have physical controls, access controls to the system. If you want to get into Blackboard, what do you have to do? You have to put in some kind of you have to put in your username, your password, and what else? You have to have that dual mobile. Not enough that somebody steals your username and password, they don't have your phone, hopefully. That's access control, communications control, business continuity planning. What does that mean? The university has to plan if the security system goes down, what are we going to do? If the whole computer system goes down, what are we going to do? The hospital, right? What's going to happen? They have something called what they call ransomware. Ransomware means that they take hostage, like ransom. Let's say, God forbid, you would be kidnapped, right? They go to your parents, Dylan, and they say, oh, we love our child. How much money do you want? Bring them back. We'll give them whatever they want. It's the same thing with data. I'm going to operate tomorrow. And what's going to happen? I'm operating and I don't even know. I don't have your history. I don't even know what leg I'm supposed to operate on. So what the university does is it has ransomware, and guess how they pay them? How do you think they pay them? In what currency do they pay it? And a lot of hospitals, I'd say 90% of the hospitals that get hacked for ransomware end up paying the perpetrators, even though, everybody said don't pay. You want to be up and running. They basically say, we're not going to allow you to go to your hard drive. How did they pay? In what currency, Dylan?
Like Bitcoin, probably. It's not flexible.
Bitcoin, they can't trace it. They say they can't trace it. They can trace it, but it's harder to trace it. So they used to be really big, go ahead. They don't ask for rubles. I guarantee you, right? They ask for Bitcoin, and then they go and some companies have a Bitcoin, hospitals have Bitcoin accounts just for that. So this is basically what they talk about here. Basic guidelines, controls. So think about it. I'm vulnerable. We're all vulnerable. What do we want to do? Minimize those vulnerabilities, minimize those threats, but still be able to operate. how encryption works, virtual private network. What does it mean? When I'm on the internet, I'm more vulnerable. So there's something called a virtual private network that says we're not going to use the public internet. We're going to create our own little network, and that's called VPN. People are really concerned, they use that. Sometimes you're not so concerned, you don't have it. And that's it. Questions? Isabella? Did that help? Yes, no?
Yes.
Okay. So now let's go to the last part. The last part, so you'll take the first part, multiple choice, get it out of the way. And Andrew David, I guarantee a lot of those questions you say, oh, I understand what that is. No, I'm not trying to trick you. I'm not trying, you got it, Andrew?
Yeah,
know
so like if there was a topic that the quizzes tested you on, there's not going to be something on the exam that wasn't there, is what you're saying.
More or less, you know what I mean? 99% yes. You know what I mean? I wouldn't worry about anything. You know, we have limited time. I'd focus on that. I focus on the review sheet. I focus on the, that's what I would start with, the review sheet. I'd focus on that. And then for practice, go through the quizzes. The next part is you need to, these are, let me go through this one. Our class ends when?
45, I think.
Is it 4:45? Okay. These are the questions, Andrew David, we were talking about it. These are questions that I would ask. I'm asking 2 out of these 4. One is about automated trading systems. What are the advantages and disadvantages? What are algorithms? Instructions to the computer? What's a virtual what's a virtual desktop infrastructure? A virtual desktop infrastructure is basically that VDI that we gained access to get the a remote desktop that we were able to use NinjaTrader. What are the characteristics of backtesting and optimization? And give examples of trading rules and strategies we used.
I have a question.
Yes.
So the test, will it be like weighted 80% like multiple choice, 20% for your response, or
I don't know.
how do you weight those?
I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Okay.
We'll see how everyone does, but they'll be weighted. You know what I mean?
Okay, yeah.
You usually curve if you need to, or
Let's worry about. Let's take the test and then worry about it. Don't do too much curving, because everybody wants to do curves. And what a curve a lot of times means is that if everyone has done well, then I have to curve and I have to give more C's than anybody wanted to deserve. So let's concentrate now on taking the test, and later on we'll worry about curving. And we don't want, and many times we don't want a curve. Because if everyone has done well, if everybody got 90s and 100s, it would mean that I have to get C's and D's and F's if I wanted to curve, right? So let's not worry about that. Okay, so basically, this is what I want to show you, that I want then for you to look at it, that if I went to it all has to do with NinjaTrader, is I need to look at trading rules. And what is the trading rule that we use for SMA crossover? Remember we used the SMA crossover? Do you remember that, Andrew David, right? We had 2 moving averages, right? A fast moving average, was 10-day. You remember that? And the slow moving average was what? You remember, Andrew? It could be anything, but do you remember what we used?
I feel like it was 25 or 30.
25 days. Later on, we could make our own. You remember in optimization? But I'm just making this up. A moving average could be anyways. And what we said was, what is the, if I wanted an algorithm to buy, I want an algorithm, an algo to buy or short. That's what we did in that SMA moving average. That SMA moving average right, was to buy or short. And we need to give rules for it. So what was the rule, Andrew? When, or let's say if, the fast moving average, I'm going to say MA for moving average, crossed above the slow moving average, then what? Buy. Else, what do we do? You complete the rest, Andrew. The fast moving average did what? Crossed what? When did we short?
When the slow crossed above the fast.
Right, or when the fast crossed what? Below, right? Either way you could have written it, right?
Is that when we would short?
Exactly. Now, once this is written in English, right, more or less, right, then basically you can give that to the Ninja Trader in English, and it will write the code for you. Or if you knew the code, you could see the code. That code was pretty simple. So if I went to web links and I went to my virtual desktop, and I went to student VDI and said allow, waited for the connection, entered my credentials, because what? My credentials then are access controls, right, Dylan? They're really access controls. What they're controlling, it may be an overkill, right? Because who cares? But since this is only for this virtual desktop infrastructure is only for my students. No other students have this. And then if I went into Ninja Trader, hopefully I could log in. We'll see. Andrew, are you in already?
In what?
In
Ninja
Ninja Trader?
No, I wasn't going to.
Okay, all right. But what I could do is if I went to Ninja Trader, I could go to Ninja Script and look at the source code of SMA crossover and see those two if statements. But what I would ask you in the class is not to write it in Ninja Script, but do what Andrew David is write it in English terms, like just like you did. And give me an example of a trading rule. And it may be, you remember how we said we didn't want to do shorts? For some of them, I
Yeah.
could say, instead of if the SMA fast crosses below, then close the position. I don't want to do shorts. That would be your change. So what I think I'll do, since we're coming to the end, what I think I'll do on Friday is, Isabella, I'll spend on Friday the time for the open-ended questions. From 3:30 to 4:30, I'll spend the time going over the open-ended questions. Questions? No? We're okay? Okay. So let's do attendance. I'll stay for a few minutes. Those of you that want to join me on Friday, I'll go over more in detail the second part. Also answer any questions, Ryan, if you have. For instance, on the first part, I'm not sure about what is cash or what's a CPU or something like that. I'll be happy to do it. Lily, what do you think?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. And then after that, we'll do some additional projects. I have to get out of this student VDI, right? And remote desktop. Here's my Zoom. So you see tomorrow, Friday, I'll be able to do that Friday. I'll do this. Let me get another section so I can get the attendance. And I'll record it too. So even if you're there on Friday, a lot of times it's good to hear it. Sometimes you can hear some of it again. So G. Attendance. We're loading it, waiting for the check-in, start check-in. 2089, we have check-in. Stay with me if you have questions. Thank you for Andrew, Isabella, and Pavel, and Ryan for being my guinea pigs, right? And you guys gave me feedback to go fast, slow. And we're here. So stay with me if you have additional questions. Otherwise, for sure, I'll see everybody on Monday. And Ryan will be the tour guide to find out where SB204 is. And hopefully we'll be able to get in. The door won't be locked, Ryan. We will need certain access keys just to get in. They have such controls, right? Because they have the physical controls. So you can even think about that. You know how they lock all the doors, right? Physical controls, but they put too many controls in that we can't get in ourselves and do our own work. Okay. Keep up the good attitude. That's the main thing.
I had a question.
Sure.
Are the multiple choice questions more like definition or conceptual based?
It's more like the quizzes. Remember the quizzes?
Yeah. So like conceptual kind of.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think more definition, conceptual. Some of them will be conceptual, like
Okay.
maybe some giving you a table and saying what is the primary key,
Yeah. Okay.
So and then you'll look for something that's unique. You know,
Yeah,
so you'll look like for a C number rather than a course number.
Yeah, so you kind of
course-
need to know the definition anyway to like.
Right, to get it. So maybe professor, the professor table, if you see Russianic twice, right, that's not going to be unique,
Mhm.
right? But
Interesting.
maybe, maybe, you know, the C number is going to be unique. That's where, in order to find that one record of that one student.
All right. And I had one more question real
Sure.
quick.
Okay.
Are the open-ended questions, like, do you want us to write like a paragraph for each of them?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
like,
yeah,
Exactly.
paragraphs, some points, showing that you understand it, showing that you've, and you have the questions
Mhm.
in advance, so it's not going to be a surprise.
Are the open-ended questions worth the same weight as a multiple choice?
It
one?
depends. You know, I would do, usually, Sab, what I think is a lot of times the open-ended will bring you up. You know, let's say you got a B plus and you really did well on the open-ended, it'll give you extra points on that, you know? So what, you want it more on, so what's your concern, that you not as well, or what?
Oh, I have no concern. I was just curious, just because
Yeah, so usually that's what it is, you know, for the first time. Usually what I have is I usually have the open-ended add points to you, you know?
yeah,
So
and then
you can basically differentiate my better students, Asad, that have done well, really understand those open-ended questions better than, you know, just kind of memorizing what are terms.
right, and then I emailed you, but I don't know if I was clear in the email. But
Which one?
last class, my computer died and I didn't
Okay,
have.
so let me see here in settings. Let me see. Not settings. I need what? I need records. Let's just do it right now.
Perfect.
Let's see if it comes up.
Yeah, because I was like, it was
Yeah,
like literally
I
2 minutes
remember. Yeah,
before.
yeah. That it happens, right? That's the beast. What can I tell you, right?
Yeah, and I didn't want to ask like a classmate because I've gotten in trouble before for asking like saying
You
like,
can in my class, Seb, you can ask.
okay, all right, yeah,
You know what I mean? So ask in my class. You know what I mean? I have different, you can see I run my class a lot different probably than anyone else you've ever had, right?
right.
And
Yeah.
it's also online and so forth. So Seb, just keep up the good work and good attitude. And the opposite, I want you to help the other students in your group in the exercise. I want them to do it, but I want you to help them.
Got
You
it.
understand? Where other instructors say, don't help them with your homework. I'm the opposite.
Exactly. Yeah,
You understand? When you need help, you want other people to help you so you can learn, right?
exactly.
I don't
Best
want you
way
to
to
do
learn,
the
and
work. What?
it's the best way to learn and best way to team build. So.
And not even that. Once you teach somebody else, and have you finished the exercises?
I'm still working on it. We're still working on it, but yeah.
Okay, so come on Friday, and I'll help you with the exercises.
All right, yeah. I'm flying to my brother's school on Friday, but if I'm available to, then I definitely
Or at least have some of the other students in your
it'll
group do it. Come.
yeah.
At least
right.
have one of your group members do it. Okay.
All right. I appreciate your help.
And in between, sometimes you can even, you know, if you're in the airport or something, you can, that's the beauty of being online. You don't have to physically, we're not going to be doing it in the
Exactly.
lab.
Exactly.
But just come back on time for the exam on Monday.
I should be. I get back really early in the morning, so it'll be
Yeah,
long.
yeah. It's good that you come back early because you know how it's always delayed. So
Yeah.
hopefully.
All right.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Have a good day.
Okay. Yeah. Keep it up, Seb. Ciao.
Ciao.
Stop sharing. I don't know what's going on here. Stop recording.